Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is our episode number 117, dedicated to a team who on July 30th, 1947, snapped the Cincinnati Reds' 16-game winning streak, the New York Giants. And as always, thanks for listening and downloading to the episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Scott Agness, who covers the Indiana Pacers for the Fieldhouse Files, as he comes on and talks about the Pacers as they resume the season, and a whole lot more. Leading up into this week, the plan was to continue the preseason preview for college football and NFL teams for the upcoming season. And then I looked at my calendar and I said, hold on. It's July 30th. On July 30th, the NBA season resumes. So I took a timeout, got Scott to come on, reached out to Scott to see if he would be generous enough to come on. He said yes. And this week, no football, all basketball. Let's go, baby. The NBA is back. And before I get to that conversation, I want to clarify and just go over one more time very quickly what I said on Monday, which I listened back to it, which normally I don't, but for some reason it said listen back to this segment. It was a second segment about Adolph Rupp and the University of Kentucky getting pushed back and people urging them to remove Adolph Rupp's name from the title of the basketball arena. And I will say very simply this. I thought it was very confusing. I thought that my stance was not solidified and firm like it should have been. I don't believe the University of Kentucky should remove Adolph Rupp's name from the title of the arena, and I will leave it at that. Let's go ahead and take a trip to Indianapolis, Indiana to enjoy my fun conversation with Mr. Scott Agness, who covers the Pacers for the Fieldhouse Files. Hey, Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jay. How are you?
Doing very well, very well. Scott, COVID-19 has been crazy. It's been crazy for me. It's been crazy for you. Been crazy for everyone. But it's also given us time to pick up a hobby or two to kind of get us past and get us through this weird time where there's no sports. You can't go outside. You can't go out to eat. Some people couldn't even go to work. Their whole work. Some people lost their jobs. So their whole lives were shaken up. But what did you pick up, if any, hobby? 1, 2, 5, doesn't really matter. What did you kind of do to kind of pass the time?
Yeah, so to be honest, not too much has changed in my world. I have it pretty easy. I live by myself. I'm downtown, right by the Fieldhouse. Instead of going to practice, instead of going to games and seeing guys every day, that's probably been the most bizarre point, because what I keep telling people is during a season, and even to some extent during the summer when there's summer league, there's draft, those sorts of things, I see Nate McMillan and players and staff more than anyone in my family or close friends, because I see them almost every single day over at the Fieldhouse. The one thing that stands out to me that I have picked up is I've been trying to do some kind of workout, usually at minimum a walk of about 5 miles per day, just to get out, quite honestly, enjoy the sun, get some vitamin D. Been able to golf a little bit more, but I try to do that as much as I can anyway. So for me, it's to get outside, enjoy the weather, and get a little walk in at minimum.
I agree with that. Actually, earlier today, I went to, and those of you that don't know, Scott and I both live in Indianapolis, so he'll know when I'm out the area I'm speaking of. I went to Fort Bend earlier today and walked, and it was supposed to be like a 4 or 5 mile hike. Ended up being 7.5 because the person I was with, we ended up getting lost. So I was like, oh, let's just keep going. So we just kept going and going. But they made a comment about how younger them, early, like previous years, hiking wasn't a thing, walking wasn't a thing. But then they see all the state parks that Indiana provides, the ways that it can allow you to escape and forget about what it is that's going on, and just be a way for you to just kind of just enjoy nature and kind of rejuvenate yourself and just recharge, you may want to say. So I told them, I said, I've been hiking every now and then, and it's the same thing. I go to parks, and I went to Cataract Falls actually, and first time I was there, there's no cell phone service out there at all. So I got there, started walking around, forgot about everything. I was just out there enjoying everything, but it was a great recharge for me. And walking, like you said, it's a great way to get you moving, and it's a great way to kind of just help your mind as well.
Yeah, and for me, it's basically getting outside, getting some natural light, because where I am, I unfortunately don't have a lot of natural light, and just get some fresh air. I usually almost always actually have a podcast. Occasionally I'll mix it up and listen to music, but it's one way to not only kill time, maximize time is kind of what I say. If I'm going to listen to a podcast anyways, might as well be moving. And I just haven't felt comfortable just yet going back to a gym or anything like that. So get it on my own. I love downtown Indy. That's why I live in downtown Indy. So I want to enjoy it as much as I can, because a big frustration of mine, of course, is the little things you can't do. Walk over to Victory Field at night for a game, then go to a local bar with friends afterwards, or summer concerts is a big thing for me. So we're just trying to make the best of an unusual situation is kind of the line that I always say.
Yeah. And just doing all we can, really, just making the best of an unusual situation. And I was looking at at the website, the Fieldhouse Files, which I do encourage every Pacers fan out there listening to this to check out the Fieldhouse Files. Scott does a phenomenal job with that. But I was checking that out, and I was reading kind of the About section, and I had come across you. So I'm a big high school basketball fan here in the area, and I want to say it was 2015 maybe. You called a regional game at Southport Fieldhouse. I think it was you and Dave Nicholson were on the call of that game, I think.
That's all right, yeah. Someone was out of town, and I was the backup filling in, and I think I had the 2 morning games and then the evening regional game, if I remember right.
Okay. And so that's my first – I had saw you there, and then I happened to go to a Pacers game, saw you. You were literally at the game a few rows in front of me. I'm in the stands. You're down there reporting and covering the game. And I was just like, okay. And then I found you on Twitter. And I was like, Scott does a phenomenal job just reporting, keeping it clean, keeping fans up to date with what's going on. And I thought you had just started with the Pacers recently. And then I realized it came out, no, it was back in 2012. When did you know this was the route you wanted to go as far as covering the Pacers?
So that specifically, I wasn't exactly sure. It was a random opportunity that came about. I remember being in bed, and around 1 a.m., I found out that the former writer had moved on, that he wasn't being brought back. And so an opportunity with Pacers.com was available. And even going back before that, I was a ball boy within the franchise since 2003. So most people within the franchise I knew, and almost everyone I had come across, and at least been a familiar face, I think, to anyone within the franchise, working almost every Pacer game and every Fever game. And actually, I'm more geared towards broadcasting. You see my mic, I have my podcast. You talked about my play-by-play out at the regionals. That's more so what I like and am geared towards, and would actually more so like to do. But I also love basketball. I love the NBA, and I love Indianapolis. And so because of the current opportunities that were offered to me and what all made sense, I've kind of rolled with those while also continuing broadcasting stuff on the side, whether it be the high school stuff, IHSAA.TV stuff, or with IUPUI as well. And you talk about local basketball, who knows, what things are going to look like, or college. That fall sports season, which is at least pushed back, I think, Horizon League October 1st, that impacts me because I'd be out calling soccer games out over at IUPUI. So there's one less check for me. It's frustrating.
It's very, very frustrating. I didn't know before. So that regional game, I think, was at Southport, which I kind of referenced and you kind of piggybacked on, that you called. That was the only time that I had seen you call a game. And so I'm there, and I forget who was playing that day. I think the gym was packed. But I got home that night and was able to rewatch the broadcast. And I'm like, Scott's really good. Was that something you picked up in high school? Was it in college? How did that passion come about?
Yeah, that started in middle school, maybe even before that. So I got 3 older sisters, and one thing I always did was they were all active in sports. So I would have your old school video camera with the mini tapes. I'd put that in. I bought a computer headset with the mic in and headphone out. And I would just put on a mini thin headphones and commentate the game. And of course, back then it was very mediocre at best, right? You're on the soccer field, and I'm saying Sarah passes to Julie over to Kelly. And that's basically the extent of the commentary. But I not only loved being at those games, but I enjoyed being a part of it. So I would even make highlight reels for some of the girls before they went off to college to try to get them scholarships, right? And back then you don't have as much content as you do now. And then even in middle school, when one of my sisters was at North Central, we have WJEL there, and they needed a play-by-play person. Somebody didn't show up or something, on the color analyst actually. And they knew I was there. I was going to be recording it myself anyway. Why don't you give it a try? And so through high school, I was commentating every football, men's and women's basketball game. Eric Gordon was there. He was a year ahead of me. So that was outstanding. And then I continued on at IU as well.
Okay, nice. I got to say, you're very good. I wish they would. I would find a way to catch some of the IUPUI broadcasts and things like that. I had no idea you were doing that. But in the future, whenever that stuff comes back, I'll definitely have to check it out there. Is it hard balancing that and covering the Pacers?
Not too much, mainly because the individuals with the play-by-play side are very flexible. They understand covering the Pacers right now is kind of number one. And so I've made that work as best I can. But I'm also always looking for new offers and new places to go. So if someone wants to make me a full-time offer doing play-by-play, that's something I would absolutely consider doing. There's just so much talent out there, but there's also a ton of opportunities. And if you think about some of our best broadcasters here in Indianapolis. At one time, you had Bob Lamey. He had been there forever with the Colts. Don Fisher, one of my mentors and idols, he's been at IU for like 48 years. So one of the best jobs in the country has not changed in a half century. Mark Boyle has been with the Pacers something like 32 years. Chris Denari's going on 15. So there's not a lot of changeover, and there's, especially now with people like yourself, more and more people learning how to broadcast or host shows or podcasts, even more people that want to and are getting better at being behind the mark, being more comfortable. Because I think back then it was kind of a rarity, and now there's extreme competition, of course.
Plutus Sports Analytics is a company based on minimizing the uncertainty in sports betting to help you maximize your profit. New Finland's first sports analytics team provides daily predictions for all Major League sports so you can win big. Whether you want to hit MLB picks out of the park or get a slam dunk on your NBA betting tickets, Plutus is a company of choice. Use code JSP10 for 10% off their daily service. One thing that we're going to find some immense competition in a different way is in the Orlando bubble. The season got halted, I think it was March 11th. And then now the scrimmages have started up. The excitement of sports being back, not just the NBA, but WNBA, Major League Soccer, you have baseball, hoping that football on both the college and the NFL side start on time. Understand if they don't with what's going on right now in America. But with the Orlando bubble and the Pacers have an opportunity they're kind of like in no man's land, you may want to say. You know what they were before we halted play, but now you're wondering what we're going to see now. We heard about the Oladipo people that don't even care about the Pacers are talking to you like, hey, did you hear about Oladipo? Did you hear about what happened with him? I'm like, yeah, I did, but there's generally more to the story. And then lo and behold, some more news came out. I think it was something happened back in January that kind of trickled down to be possibly what happened to the effect here. And then also the injury. There's so many different things coming out when you say Oladipo may not play in Orlando. But we'll get to that in a second. But with the Orlando bubble, what can we expect from the Pacers?
I think right now we just need to see a somewhat healthy team because we thought going down there they'd be almost entirely healthy except for Jeremy Lamb, and Victor would still be working his way back. Well, as it turns out, Goga's in a tough spot, really hasn't practiced much. He was one of the players, however, I know that spent entire quarantine the last 4 months here in Indianapolis. So at least he was around the facilities, those sorts of things. Guys that were not was Domas, was Victor. And Victor looks outstanding, I think, by all measures and kind of what we expect, even though he's not quite 100%. And then this Sabonis injury seemingly came out of nowhere, a guy that he was rehabbing out in Los Angeles and came back and went through his individual workouts, looked okay from what we could see. They were sent basically 2-minute footage every day from the Pacers, and that's the extent of what we can see of guys on the court, and it's very selective. But that's all I can go off of right now, sadly. And then ultimately, once they got down to Orlando, he started practicing and going 5-on-5 as they could the first day on July 11th and just didn't feel right. And anyone that knows plantar fasciitis or plantar fascia injuries, it's terrible. And more than anything, it's not even surgery that's needed. It's rest, which the Pacers don't exactly have right now. They did, but not now. And you need 6-8 weeks at minimum, I think, for him to lay low and not do much. So right now I have a very low expectation for him contributing this season because in the big picture and for next season specifically, I'm not sure it makes sense for him to try to return right now when they don't even have a contending roster.
That is true. Help me out. I think his contract is up next season. Is that right?
No, he agreed to a contract extension, signed a contract extension before this season. So starting this upcoming year, going into a new contract where he makes $75 million over the next 4 years, you need that guy out there. That's too much to pay for a guy to be sidelined, and he's just 24. So there's not significant concern in the big picture. They just need to get a handle on this and get it taken care of as quick as they can.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wasn't able to watch the scrimmage today with the Mavs. I think you had the chance to. What did you see from the team today? And I think before when I was looking up to see the time of the game, and I was actually, I think on Twitter, someone said the first scrimmage was 40 minutes. Today's scrimmage was a full 48. So even the NBA is saying, we understand this ramp-up period needs to be a slow process because you guys have gone from full season, March halted, and then basically not your traditional 5-on-5 or no 5-on-5 scrimmages like you're used to. So they even know for the human body, there needs to be a slow process to go from nothing to a little bit more so your body doesn't crumble. But what did you see today during the scrimmage with the Mavs?
Yeah, and to that last point, though, that's exactly why they did the 40 minutes, more of kind of an international type feel where we know the first couple games, if not the entire 3 scrimmages, is more about finding a rhythm, building your conditioning, and working towards game shape. Nobody down there, I don't care if it's LeBron, nobody is in true game shape because you can't mock that up at all without truly playing some games. And no one really has, probably outside of maybe 1-on-1, 3-on-3. Nobody really knows. And so that was the point of all that. And they've been managing minutes. Guys today played no more than 29 minutes, which was about what the Pacers were wanting. My takeaways, Jade, for today were, number one, I thought Vic has taken another step. He looked a little bit more confident. He was willing to test the knee and his bursts a little bit more. Really liked his passing, hit several 3-pointers. I thought just in general, he looked much better out there. TJ Warren looked like he picked up where he left off, being the team's leading scorer. He was that today with 20 points after the scrimmage too. And then I thought for Miles Turner, it was his first game in 4 months. He cautiously sat out of game 1. And this is all new to him, number one, being back on the floor, obviously. But secondly, now without Domas, more is going to be asked of him. And so he'll be playing the true 5 spot, which means on the offensive end, Domas was playing the 5 spot, meaning he was the one getting it. He was the one flashing up and getting it in the post. And now Miles will probably play less on the perimeter, more inside, and be asked to do more because they're all stars out right now. And so I thought he impressed in just his first game back.
Good. That's good to hear. And I know Miles Turner, and before you and I first recorded, you saw the hat. You're like, oh, you're a Pacers fan. I said, yeah, I live in Indy. Been a Pacers fan my whole entire life, and I wasn't sure which hat to pull out today, and this was the one that got the nod. But a lot of people, and I don't know if you see it the same way or not, have been very critical of Miles Turner with his inability sometimes or inconsistencies to play down low or to have the lower body strength that is needed. I'll go back to one player. I know you say this is bad of me, but Andre Drummond kills Miles Turner. It seems like every time Andre Drummond plays the Pacers,
there's a lot of physical guys. A lot of physical guys that kill Miles Turner, and I think that's one of the contributing factors in all this is. And remember, back in the day, it was Jonas Valanciunas, Pero Antic, I think it was.
Yeah.
I want to say back in 2015. There's maybe 14. Anyway, there's been a lot of guys that have had their way with some of the Pacers bigs, and that's been the challenge. Now that I'm thinking about it, now I'm dating myself. Antic was more Roy Hibbert back in the day where they owned him, remember, when he was playing with Atlanta. But nonetheless, your point's valid here. And I think a lot of it is, they expect him to be a true center, meaning back to the basket, be physical, go get rebounds, rather than having games where he has 4 rebounds, right? Mm-hmm. And that applied to Roy as well. People were criticized Roy just as much, if not more, for his lack of rebounding. But sometimes it's Miles blocking his center out, so then somebody else, like Lanson previously, could go chase and come down and get the rebounding. So Pacers are not a good rebounding team, but a lot of it more so falls on the guards. Instead of sneaking out, they need to come in and help out. I think a lot of it, too, was now his contract. He's making over $18 million per year, and so you expect a little more. And it's interesting, though, to think back because he's kind of the longest tenured player on the roster. And so he's one of those that dates back going to Frank Vogel days and to this current crop. He's been the one constant among that group, but I like what he generally is able to contribute out there. Of course, we would like to see him knock down a few more shots, maybe be a little bit more physical and average, 6 to 7 rebounds per game. But Jay, in my opinion, in all of this with Miles is I think fans need to reassess their expectations for him. He's never going to be a guy that averages a double-double or averages 20 and 10. Or 20 and 8. Realistically, I think he's doing his job if he's able to average something like 14 and 7 per game, be reliable, be out there on the floor, knock down a few big 3-pointers when they're sagging off of him and playing from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I recently had a gentleman on that's an NFL scout, and him and I actually talked about how you can't analyze the box score. And I've fallen in the trap of that. I look at the box score. 5 rebounds. Who they play? Oh, okay, it's expected. Who they play? 6 rebounds. Who they play? Oh, wow. Okay. You expect more. But as you said so well, the box score only says so much. Unless you watch the game and unless you're focusing on every single second or play after play after play and seeing maybe Miles didn't get the rebound, but maybe he boxed his man out. As you said, maybe the guard or the forward got said rebound, and Miles Turner doesn't show his contribution doesn't show up in the box score, but it does show up in other ways on the court. And a lot of fans, myself included, we just got to look at the game more closely instead of the box score after the game.
I think the perfect example of that screaming at us right now is Justin Holiday. He did lead the team in scoring after scrimmage 1, but in general, number 1, he's the oldest player on the team at 31. He's the only player to play in every game. So he's the most dependable. He very rarely, if ever, misses games. He's versatile. He can play basically the 2 through 4 and may now be asked to play more of the 4, which is a little bit concerning just in terms of the short time frame to recover and such, because we saw what that did to CJ Miles for quite a while when he had to go against bigger players. But now we are seeing teams play smaller. But I think a guy like Justin Holiday or even TJ McConnell, the energy he brings and his scrappiness, those things don't necessarily equate and are obvious when you're casual fans looking at a box score. You really have to at least watch the game at minimum.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I don't watch the games, but there are the times when I can't watch it. The box score is a place that I go, but you got to go back and look at and just really analyze the game itself. The box score only tells you so much. It doesn't tell you the complete story of the game. But the games we're looking forward to, especially for Pacers fans, it is not just the 8 kind of ramp-up games, regular season back in place. I've heard some people call them the seeding games. I'm not sure which way you want to go as far as calling them.
The NBA is calling it officially the seeding games. So
they are?
That's what I've been rolling with. Yeah, these are the scrimmage games. Those will become the seeding games, and then we enter the postseason.
Okay. So maybe I didn't know that. I heard the seeding games just like yesterday, so I wasn't sure what they were called. But with the seeding games and things like that, the Pacers are in a spot, like you said. The roster is a certain way. It needs some help. Injuries have not helped them, but Pacers fans still want to see their team. We know they're going to make the playoffs. Like, it would be an utter disaster if that didn't happen. But you want to see your team not just go first round, not go second round, but to fight all lives and go further. When the playoffs start, how deep, where do you see this team going once the playoffs actually start?
Yeah, for right now, Pacers are in the playoffs, so you can count on that. Where they're seeded is kind of, and that hence the seeding round games, is because that's where you're trying to figure out seeding. And it obviously doesn't mean nearly as much as it might previously because you have home court advantage, you have more games at your place, you have your atmosphere. Just as Philadelphia, that's a team significantly hampered by not having these at home. They were outstanding. I think maybe 2 losses at home all year. But on the road, I want to say they were below 500. So that's quite the difference for them. And one of the areas I think that's not talked about enough, both with the NBA, but maybe even other sports, is getting them inside of a bubble like this is you get rid of the traveling, which means recovery should be a little bit better. These guys aren't being taxed by jumping on a plane, arriving at 2 a.m. So that should make for better quality of play, hopefully, when it comes down to it. There will be some advantages to home court. Certainly, you have your signs, your PA announcer maybe occasionally, your music. But realistically, that's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. But what the Pacers right now are competing with is they could go as high as probably the 3rd seed. Realistically, it's probably the 4 or 5, maybe to the 6. But I'm higher on the Pacers than probably most analysts are when it comes down to it. It's so hard to decide how you feel about them until Victor definitively says whether he's in or not. Right now, he hasn't said anything. I don't want to make assumptions because we've learned not to do that with Victor. Only he can make this decision for him. But if he does play, I think the Pacers have a very good chance of advancing past the first round. After that, it would totally depend on matchups, but most likely it would not be favorable. You're looking at probably the Milwaukee Bucks, say, in round 2, and that's almost seemingly an automatic exit, it feels like, at least the way the Bucks have been playing. They've looked outstanding, have a great roster, and with Giannis, look out.
That's all you can say. Just look out. It'd be nice if the Pacers had Bam Adebayo that could at least guard Giannis better than anybody else in the league, but that's not the case. It would be nice if the Pacers had other players that weren't hurt. Like, let's say Victor Oladipo did get hurt. Sabonis never got hurt. The injury bug never hit the team, but that's not the case. And I know a lot of Pacers fans are also wondering if Victor does play, decides to commit to play, and then actually shows up and plays well in the first round, will his body, and you're more in tune with this than I am, or a lot of other people that listen to this, will his body hold up, and will his mind specifically hold up throughout the playoffs. Let's say they go past the first round into the second, because I'm curious to see how his body holds up as well.
Yeah, so we can only go off, Jay, what we've seen so far. And that's to this point, Victor has not had any setbacks, not in March, not before he returned in December, January, and not during this off period where he was spending it down at one of his homes down in Orlando. So going off that and the fact that they're going to have at least one day between playoff games, talking about the playoffs, at least, I think he's going to be just fine and in good shape. He can take that day off if need be, the day before. He's been doing, at least going into the bubble, he has this hyperbaric chamber. He's all about trying to stay ahead of things. And according to him, he's doing very good mentally with this rehab. I even asked him today whether he's been getting emotional out there at all during this quote-unquote second comeback, right? Because when he and even going back to Paul George came back, they talked about how emotional it was and how they'll never take the game for granted ever again, those sort of things. And that's how Vic felt back in January. But he said today that no, he's not thinking about that. He doesn't want to overthink things. In fact, he just wants to play ball and live moment to moment. So I'm not worried about him should he commit to the playoffs and what he'll be able to contribute, because you could also taper his minutes, and 25 minutes of Vic is better than anybody else on that roster. Yeah. So I'm good with it.
Very true. You mentioned something about reporting, and you were able to ask him a question. Reporting with the bubble is different, bizarre. I saw on Instagram, Reggie Miller has the privilege of going down to the bubble to call games. Chris Denary is calling games from Indianapolis. So the whole dynamic, especially for reporters, it's different. I was watching the WNBA on Saturday. Ryan Rucco and Rebecca Lobo were in studio. Holly Rowe was down in the bubble at IMG Academy. So it's everyone's the way that people are getting their information and reporting on it, it's different. So I'm curious from your perspective, how has that aspect been different when you're not around the players all the time?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is you're not there in person. You're not able to see guys, even have cool conversations about non-basketball things. And honestly, Jay, that's where so many of the good stories, I think, come from, is you learn about a guy's shoe taste or TJ McConnell's love for coffee, or I'm talking golf with Doug McDermott, or I learned how Goga Batadze still doesn't have his driver's license, but he already has an Audi.
Excuse me? He doesn't?
Goga does not have his United States driver's license. So, again, all those tidbits you're not going to get over these Zoom calls. But for fans here, we're now being able to talk to Nate McMillan and usually two players every single day. But it's in a group setting. So you also have to carefully plan out your questions, because if you get a great response, there's a big risk of somebody else using that answer, or that's formulating their next story when you were trying to own that. Whereas normally I'm talking to guys alone in the locker room before games, maybe after games, pulling them aside for one more question after practices, things like that. So the competition level is different. But I will say, for some of the reporters who kind of do this on the side or show up to just games or certain things like that, this is a whole new ballgame, because now they're able to attend every single press conference, because you can be anywhere. You could be walking down the street on Zoom on your phone and participate. So that's a whole different ballgame. You do have about 20 reporters in the bubble, but as we've seen so far, and it would change a little bit in the playoffs, there's not much interest in the Pacers. A few national reporters have gone to one Pacers practice thus far, but for obvious reasons, if the Lakers play, if the Raptors play, if the Bucks, Clippers, that's where they're going. I can't necessarily blame them, but it is what it is. And so you kind of have your core group of about 5 reporters on every one of these calls, and we try to make the best of the situation. And it's also a chance for us to lean on some of our personal relationships we might have with guys, to send them a text or call and check in, whether it's with players or staff or coaches. Even if it's nothing we necessarily use or quote, we can have a better feel for what guys are going through down there.
Absolutely. And then looking ahead to next season, I don't know if you've heard anything about what the access will be like after life after the bubble, because we hope the bubble is not a continual thing where games are down in Orlando for the upcoming seasons in the NBA. But going into next season, have you heard about how your access may be different, or will it be the same, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, not exactly, mainly because we don't know what the season will look like, or at this point, even when it will restart, because there was that early press release just talking about when the season tentatively could be scheduled. And these are all tentative dates, but, it was talking about when is the draft lottery, when's the draft combine, and even those dates for the combine, not set. Who knows if that will even happen? So as of right now, I think the season is tentatively scheduled for early to mid-December, but that could go out the window. And then I think media coverage, so much of that, and even where games are played, depends on, do we have a handle on COVID, and is there a vaccine? Do you have fans in the stands? Because part of me thinks one of the big reasons to finish this season is, one, you don't know if you're going to have next season.
Right.
So you would hate to go and not have this playoffs and not have all of next year. Or the other thing is, maybe this is a trial run for having to have a bubble for the entire next season, or have it in limited action. Maybe teams are able to travel, but there's no fans whatsoever at games. So I think there's so much experimentation going on, both with the media. You're seeing, like you said, the Fox Sports Indiana guys do it from a basement at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. Maybe that's their reality for the next year. But hopefully, once we return to normal, I hope our media setting and our availabilities all return to normal as well. Because as much as media suffers, so do the fans, because you're not reading those stories I just talked about, and you're not humanizing the guys as much. And I think to sell a team, especially like the Pacers, you have to sell the individuals and their stories way more than the team, because when you consider going into a year, realistically, probably 26 of the 30 teams have no chance of winning. That's just how it is. And so that's where you have to rely on telling a team and individual story.
And I got to say, the other guys, J. Michael works for the Star. You guys do a phenomenal job of getting the stories that you guys put J. Michael on the paper, you with the websites, things like that. You guys do a great job. As a fan, I enjoy the other side. We watch the games. We know what we're going to see on TV. TJ McConnell, Victor Oladipo, Sabonis. We all know the stories. We all know the things. Most people, when you think about Sabonis, you only hear about his dad, and you put that connection together. But then you see,
by the way, I think both I and him are so tired of hearing that question, because it's hilarious. When we were in big cities, if we were in LA or New York, there would always be a foreign reporter for Domas, but more so to the point, there would always be a couple national guys that come in and try to create that story. So what'd you learn from your dad? How much do you talk? What advice has you given him? What advice has he given you, Domas? And I can just tell on his face, he's exhausted. He's my dad. I love him. We talk every day. Like, there's nothing more. And the sad part is, something I've been efforting since he came to the Pacers, is to talk to Arvydas, his dad. That's a different story, and that'd be a unique one I think is worth telling. But I probably heard him try to respond to the question I just referenced previously 30 times over the last couple of years. So. And that's the funny part, the difference between those on the beat, the 2 or 3 of us there every day, versus your national media, or maybe a columnist who comes in and asks questions that, if they read our story, they're aware of the nuts and bolts behind. And that's another thing that can become frustrating.
No, you're exactly right about the Sabonis thing, because all I knew before really watching him all the time at the Pacers, I know his dad. I know his dad and Shaq had battles. His dad was a king overseas, and then his dad came play for the Portland Trail Blazers. I think about all those battles that the Lakers and Blazers had in the playoffs. So I went back to that, but then I was like, wait, they're not the same kind of player. So I love to see his dad play. I love to see him play, and just see how you can tell some of the things that his dad may have taught him. But I am right. Like, if I was him, answering the same question over and over and over that is getting out there in papers and in interviews and podcasts. You guys just gotta, maybe I don't know, it's homework or whatever, but just drop it, because it's all gonna be the same thing over and over and over.
I think what it is it's a reporter trying to get something new out of him, and you're just not going to with that specific questions. And if you knew him better, they would know. But it's just a risk assessment. It's like, well, maybe I'll be the guy. No, you won't. No, that's not the case here. So talking about Domas, I mean, I love the stories like him becoming a pro as a teenager and traveling the country and playing for his national team, and last year being named the Lithuania Player of the Year. And there's several Lithuanian players in the U.S. So what does that mean to him? And how about his dad being up at 4 a.m. to watch games with him and his brother in his den? Like, little things like that I enjoy. And even bringing the whole family to Chicago when they were in town for the All-Star game. And why wouldn't you? That's an awesome thing. And again, I tried to get Arvydas that weekend. He declined all those, but no need. And that was another weekend where he was asked a lot of questions about his dad, of course.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but it's just the life we live in. Scott, this has been a lot of fun. Going to do a little rapid fire here to wrap this thing up. Then also at the end, let you promote everything you're doing. There's a lot that's going on. So let's promote all the stuff here at the end. But question or thought number one, you kind of touched on it earlier. How far do you think the Pacers will go in the playoffs?
I'll say right now, second round from what I've seen. I also trust the team chemistry, even though they don't have a lot on the court in terms of a lot of playing time together. I trust this group in the way they come together under Nate McMillan. Nate's teams are always going to play hard, and they're going to do what they want better than anyone else. So I think second round is their potential.
Okay. Who's your favorite player to cover? You've been around for a while.
Yeah. I'll go back to previous teams and name some of my favorites. Luis Scola, outstanding. Jan Mahimi, really good. David West, CJ Miles, always a fascinating conversation, even more so outside of basketball.
Okay.
For me, it's honestly, think back to all those guys, Jay. It's the guys with personalities. It's the guys with other interests. Like Luis Scola bought, I forget now, like hundreds and hundreds of acres of land over back in his home country. Why? Like, that fascinates me.
Yeah. And then, see, the whole thing with me and David West, I liked him because he used to talk trash. He was kind of like the bully on the court. So I love that aspect of him.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you saw I see through the TV screen, through the articles you write, and through podcasts I listen to. You see it from a whole different lens because you were there every day.
Yeah, no doubt. The other guys I like is Dan Burke, a longtime assistant coach. That dude's hilarious, and he does not sugarcoat anything, as viewers know.
I bet some of those locker room talks, when you hear him talk in the locker room, those are probably things not suitable for children.
And not to that extreme. He's it's more so he's drawing upon like references. It's like, why are you being lazy? We need you to get out there and bust your and let's go.
Which one do you like more, writing or hosting a podcast?
Of those, I'd probably say writing, because you can be more thorough in what you say. You can take your time with it. You can get various perspectives, where in general, a podcast is either a one-on-one interview or you're by yourself. I prefer more of the conversations, and I like to explain things that maybe people didn't know before. But that's an area where also podcasting is nice, because you can take people more behind the scenes in a less formal setting.
I will give you this. I originally had broadcasting written down as the third one, but you already said up front that if a full-time broadcasting job came up, it's like, let's go, baby. I got this thing down pat. So I kind of had to write that one off.
Nice job calling accountable there.
Yeah, of course. I learned that from Peyton Manning. Favorite vacation spot?
I'll say Naples, Florida. I like it down in Florida.
See, when I think of Naples, I think of a retirement place.
So I'm a golfer. There's a lot of great golf courses down there. So that's the one thing I like about it. It's an easy in and out, direct flight from Indianapolis. Plenty of golf courses. There's a beach you can mix up, plus a lot of seafoods.
It works. It works. This one piggybacks off of the vacation area. What's a place you want to go but you have never been?
Croatia.
Why?
A lot of Pacer connections, right? You think about Damjan Rudej. That was my guy when he was in town. Boyan Bogdanovic. I want to go to his restaurant. I think that would be a lot of fun. New place to visit, and there's a lot more Croatians in the NBA. So I think that would be a touch point, a fun thing to relate back to.
Help me out. Isn't Tony Kukoc from Croatia?
Sounds yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I thought so. Favorite thing about what you do? I don't care if it's just broadcasting, podcast, or writing, but just one thing. I know there's a lot of things you love, but what's just one thing you love about what you do?
I think being around basketball and being around the people every day. Again, it goes back to the interactions and learning about Nate McMillan and how he's changed from being Sarge in Portland to being the coach he is today, or Kevin Pritchard being the guy that makes a trade at every possible move, coming to Indy and really hasn't made anything at the trade deadline other than acquiring a second-round pick. So it's fun for me to see people master their skill, whatever that is, really. You could be the best trainer in the league, and I love covering the Pacer trainers, right? So those things fascinate me. So it's obviously the daily interaction and then just covering sports, like, and getting paid to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What's a game in any sport you've never attended but you would love to attend?
The Masters.
Augusta.
I want to go to the Masters.
Augusta.
I know it's not a game, but yeah, absolutely. That's the dream. And then, of course, the obvious. You'd want to go to a Super Bowl at least once in your life. That stands out to me. And even though I'm not a huge baseball fan, I would love to go to a Game 7 or just go to any World Series game. I've never been to a hockey game, so that's on the bucket list to go to, just to experience, because I want to be well-rounded and feel what that is like. Mm-hmm. But number one, again, going back to my golf reference, it's the Masters.
You can't get away from golf, can you?
No, I love it. Oh, Wimbledon. You could throw in tennis. I want some Wimbledon on there.
You could. There's so many great things that sports fans have, and there's sports we've never like. I've never, like, the whole tennis thing. Like, that's not me. The golf thing, that's not me. But if I had the chance to go there, I would definitely go. Got two more for you. They're both basketball. One guy I know you've seen live. I don't know if you saw the other guy, but Michael Jordan or LeBron James, who would win in a game of one-on-one?
I'm going to pass, quite frankly, because I hate these conversations. I hate the comparisons. I think it's LeBron even that posted it. It was something, I'm going to botch it, but it's basically like, don't let the comparison game steal you of your current enjoyment. Don't let the comparison steal your joy. And so that's how it is. Anytime Stephen A's talking, no, turning it off. I don't care. I really love watching LeBron play. He's absolutely worth admission, and so was MJ. So that's my answer.
No, good answer. You're the first person to pass. And, okay, so I'm going to give a little insight on me. I do that because it stirs up conversation, and sometimes in rapid-fire conversations are started. On the street, I dodge that myself. But I know in the podcast setting, and a lot of listeners like hearing the conversation, I have that one towards the end. But I'm like you. Like, the conversation, it was okay. I will say it was okay at one point, but it's been completely worn out. And I used to have a different one there, but then I used this one partly because The Last Dance came on, and I was trying to change it up, try to see what other people would talk about. So it was a good conversation started. But, yeah, it definitely is played out.
Just wait 10 years. It might be, is Kevin Durant better than LeBron? Is Giannis going to be the number one player ever in NBA? Like, it's a never-ending question. And part of that is for exactly why you say that, right? It steers conversation. People clearly watch it, or else ESPN wouldn't be talking about it, for example, because they clearly go off statistics and what people want to view. So I get it. I just want nothing to do with it.
I feel it. I feel that. Last one, Kobe Bryant. I'm going to have two more. Sorry, these are two. One more. This is basketball. I'm going to do one more for North Central. You mentioned Eric Gordon earlier. So Kobe Bryant, what's one memory from his playing career?
When he didn't tip me, so I was a ball boy.
Yeah.
He lost his ear. I'm going to keep it short. He puts his earring before the game inside of his sport coat. After the game, could not find it. So me and the other locker room attendant in there looking all over for it. Finally, it wasn't actually me. It was the other friend that found it. He actually had a hole in his suit coat pocket. It fell to the bottom. Ripped the jacket open, grabbed the earring, and left without $1 tip. You don't do that. That earring had to be worth like $80,000, just guessing here. That should have been like $1,000 tip, in my opinion. Zero. So I still hold it on him after all these years.
all these years. Eric Gordon. Yeah, absolutely. Eric Gordon, a lot of people don't know how great he was at North Central. You either saw him for the 1 year at IU, if fans can think back that far, because it seems like that was years and years and years ago, or you see him now in the NBA. But what did you see firsthand from Eric Gordon and his greatness at North Central?
To me, he was the best high school player I saw in person. Obviously, there's a lot of competition of high school players in Indiana, but that I saw.
One second. And guys, I believe Scott had the chance to see Greg Oden, who another guy, if you know about great high school players, he saw Greg Oden as well. So that's how great Eric Gordon was.
You were good to mention him because I was going to preface it. So I think that EJ was the best high school player. I think Greg Oden was the most dominant, but he really wasn't asked to do a ton. They threw it up to him and he could easily score. That's how big and overpowering he was. Like, it was almost laughable. Picture a varsity player playing with seventh graders.
Yeah, basically.
Like, all you could do is chuckle out there. Like, all right, all right. And that's why I say EJ is the most dominant, because he started as a freshman. I saw him go into Carmel, beat Josh McRoberts' teams. I saw him go into LN, and they didn't necessarily win, but he was always the star player. Or, to go back to your MJ conversation, I don't know the numbers exactly, but North Central won huge. It was something like 97-57. EJ by himself scored something like 45 points himself.
It was stupid. It was stupid.
Yeah, this was on ESPN. MJ, I still remember. He was sitting right here to my left in the corner on a stool. That was him, just so dominant in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know guys nowadays locally in Indianapolis, they'll have the list of who was – you know how it is. People have those conversation starters who are the best high school basketball players from over the past 10 years, over the past 20 years. And for those of you that don't know about the history at North Central has had some great basketball players over the years. And Eric Gordon easily stands out among all the other players that have come either after him or even before him. That's how great he was there.
Yeah, probably the biggest competition, I say, is Jason Gardner. 1999, led that North Central State Championship, was Mr. Basketball, went on to have a great career at Arizona. And I always say if he was 2 inches taller, he would have had a great NBA career. He reminds me, you think of guys that made it now, Donald Sloan, Ben Hansborough for a couple of years. Like, if it was 10 years later, Jason was probably on a roster for 4 or 5 years. Think Yogi Ferrell even. He's certainly undersized for that position, but outshines it and does the most with what he can. So that was a fun group, and I was calling all those games. So that was a lot of fun back in the day.
Lucky you. I'm going a little bit longer with this, but I don't care. I had the chance. I went to LC, and LC's basketball was not that good at all back then. Really didn't get anywhere close to be good until Kyle Guy came to the school. But I remember it was freshman year. North Central was at LC. I think AJ Ratliff went to North Central. Is that right? Yep. Okay, so it was AJ Ratliff. Yeah. And AJ Ratliff was there. And then I see this guy, Eric Gordon, and I had heard about him. I had friends on the basketball team, but I didn't know much about him. I'm like, okay, wait, he's a freshman. I think his wrist or his hand was hurt that year. And I'm like, hold on. So he's a young cat. I know freshmen aren't really normally starting varsity. I know freshmen, if they're starting varsity, they're not supposed to be one of the best players, but he was. And Doug Mitchell realized that and said, wait, I got this young cat. He's special. I know I have AJ Ratliff. I know you're special. We got to try and put y'all two together and then try to get some other guys that are there in the program in the school to really push this thing further than originally planned, because we got a guy here that's special. And if we don't win at least one state championship, which is tough in Indiana, Indianapolis being the heart of it, it may be a failure. I think that he did get a ring his senior year, I think, after Greg Oden won 3 in a row.
Lost to East Chicago Central.
Are you serious?
I'll never forget Angel Garcia, a guy that was ruled ineligible at Memphis, was one of the key individuals. Kawan Short, who's now in the NFL, and then, of course, Etwan Moore. That was their squad, and they came in at Bankers Life Fieldhouse here, beat EJ. The team just did not play well, not at all. It was disgusting.
Gosh.
It was not a good showing, but they should have won.
So
he left without a ring, and that's one of the more disappointing teams, because I think Doug Mitchell maybe has 3 championships, probably. With all that talent they had over those years, should have had 6 or 7. I mean, I think of the year like Gordon Hayward when they won the state championship. That was a bad year, relatively speaking, in high school basketball. And I think, if I remember right, going back some years now, more than a decade, North Central played at Pike in the first round of the regionals at Southport and missed 17 free throws and lost by like 10. Yeah. There was something like, 11 for 38. It was just atrocious.
Oh, my goodness. And see, this whole time, I'm thinking the year after Greg Oden, it was North Central. I didn't know much about East Chicago. At that time, I knew Gary and that the region was great at basketball. They had a lot of rich history. But I didn't know how good they were. And then all of a sudden, I can kind of remember now a little bit, but I have to go back and watch that game. I do watch some old games every now and then. I'll have to go back and watch that game and see exactly what transpired during that game to where Doug Mitchell, Eric Gordon didn't get a ring that year.
Just didn't play well. It was one of those rare off nights, from what I remember, that nobody looked great. They even had a bench guy come off when it really didn't matter in garbage time. And I think he was a senior, and I think he hit like 4 threes. But by that point, they were already down that it didn't much matter.
Oh, man.
But I was right there courtside broadcasting the game. So
they let you do the state finals, too?
They do. Yep.
Oh.
I was right there, front row. There was probably 3 rows of tables, maybe 2. I was there able to call the game. So that was one of my highlights for sure.
Play-by-play and color, or did you just do play-by-play?
So I did majority play-by-play. That year, actually, I was a junior, and another individual was a senior, so he got to do the play-by-play because he was older there. But normally, I almost always did play-by-play.
Okay. Okay. I said that. I wasn't sure if they had you do just one, or had one person do both. I didn't know they split it up for you guys.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, from boys basketball, we always had 2. For girls basketball, I mostly had 2, but not always. And for football, always had at least 2.
Okay. Good deal. Scott, this has been fun. We could definitely talk more high school basketball, Pacers, all that good stuff. But let the people know where they can connect with you, where they can read some of your work, podcasts, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So you can read my work at fieldhousefiles.com. I actually encourage you to subscribe. It's free. And if you don't, what I keep telling people is if you don't like it, feel free to unsubscribe. I don't care, but at least give it a chance. And it's free when it comes down to it. And then I have my Fieldhouse Files podcast where you can listen to that on any platform this week. I'll probably have 2. Including one tomorrow I'm planning on with Kenny the Jet Smith. So that could be a lot of fun. And then I plan to do a later one maybe with the voices, Mark Boyle and Chris Denary, about how things are just different, because that's a huge change for all the fans at home. And I think they deserve to know what it's going to feel like and look like, because it's going to be even different than these current broadcasts that we've seen that have only been streaming. And then you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, just my name @ScottAgness. So check it out.
Good deal. That broadcasting thing you just mentioned, I wasn't going to go down this route, but we're having fun. So the whole radio thing, and I mentioned someone, I think I heard Joe Buck on an interview, and he talked about how it's different off of a monitor versus being in person calling a game, because the ball comes off the bat different versus what he sees off a monitor versus how it is when he's at the game. So even him in his mind, and he's called thousands of games. He's even adjusting to the new style of broadcasting that he's going through. And I can only imagine with Boyle, Slick Leonard, I hope he's able to call some of those games. I'm not sure. But it's different for Boyle. It's different for Daenerys. It's different for everybody because you're not there. You're not getting the feel of the game in the way that you normally would.
For TV, it's a little bit easier because you have the pictures to describe the scene for you. And so you can see that there's no fans. You can see the virtual fans that are going to be surrounding the court. There will be 320 of them that'll be chosen. So that'll be a unique experience. I'm not sure how you really describe much of that and do it justice on a radio broadcast. And on top of that, the biggest challenge in all that is so much of it is we use our eyes to see things going on outside. For instance, maybe Victor Oladipo goes back to the locker room. Well, you're limited to just, I don't know how many cameras they have, quite honestly, just yet. I know they have more than just the broadcast, but maybe they only can see 3 or 4 cameras at one time. And they don't have a reporter down there that can go tell them those sort of things. So you can't rely on your eyes or see that. I've seen on Twitter some GMs right now are yelling at officials. You have no awareness of any of that going on, and then you don't have the fans. So it is a challenge, but especially for radio. And so far, it's not for sure, but what I've heard is that Slick Leonard will not be part of the broadcast, mainly because they're recording in a tough environment at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, where most people are wearing masks. There's a construction zone, and he's just not in good enough health to go through something like that. So I would not expect him, unfortunately.
No, yeah, unfortunate. It's great if he would be, but his health has been going down, I think, drastically for a while. So and once you mentioned the baseball, I was like, I don't know, probably not the best idea, but I do exactly understand where you're coming from with that, Scott. Agness, this has been a lot of fun. Hopefully, if the Pacers go further, definitely have you on again. Next season, have you on again. Just not sure when. But, Scott, this has been fun. Thank you so much for coming on here on the Jay Stevens Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
NBA basketball. It's fantastic. Yes, sir, Bob. It is. And my, oh my, have I and have you and have we been longing and have we been thirstier for basketball, more thirsty than we normally are, because when we got no sports, all we were waiting for was for Adam Silver to say, yes, we're going to play in a bubble. Adam Silver to say, yes, we're going to play in our home stadiums. One of the two. We knew somehow there was a possibility of getting the season to resume and to come back into play, and we get that today. Basketball is back. You get to watch your favorite players. You get to watch the players that you can't stand to watch, and at the same time, you're able to do what you normally would have done through the rest of March and April, May, and June, but now we're doing it in July, August, September, and October, baby. Basketball is back, and basketball fans everywhere, we can rejoice. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. If you're not on Twitter and you would love to connect with the podcast, send your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode number 1, be sure to people know about the podcast. This has been episode 117 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I'll see you next time.